Dark Souls has completely changed the landscape of games. Its challenges, obfuscations and confidence in the perseverance of the player has not just spawned many impersonators, it has changed the way the industry thinks about its audience. It is a classic that people will be talking about for years to come. But we're going to talk about why you should play it right now. Dark Souls is a game that has been talked about a lot. Its many aspects have been broken down many times. This video aims to collate all of this information into one contained package, an exploration of all the elements that make this such a special game. So let's start at the beginning. Dark Souls was developed by From Software and released in 2011. From Software was founded in 1986 and had found mild success, with their best known games being King's Field and the Armored Core games. That was until 2009 when it released Demon's Souls. For the most part, Demon's Souls is the foundation that Dark Souls is built upon. Its gameplay is a bit rougher but very similar. More importantly though, its surprising success in the West showed publishers like Bandai Namco that a sequel could be something special, and it was. One of the things that you've inevitably heard about Dark Souls is its difficulty. I mean, there's an edition of the game called the Prepare to Die edition. Now it is important to remember, Dark Souls isn't just a hard game. Take Call of Duty and give the enemies 1,000,000 health and make the player die in one shot. That's a hard game, but it's not a good game. The challenge is empty. The rest of the game hasn't been designed around it, and it is going to get frustrating very quickly. Dark Souls is different from this. The entire game has been designed around its challenge. The enemies have the amount of health they do for a reason. The difficulty has been tuned to walk that line between frustrating and difficult perfectly. It is the thing that makes the game extremely satisfying, and every victory is vindicating, and you feel like you fought for it, but it doesn't ever get so frustrating that it loses its appeal. Now this is great, but it might feel a little bit empty without the ever-present stakes of Dark Souls, the constant mental arithmetic of risk and reward that the player must complete. These stakes are the core of the Dark Souls experience. It truly is the thing that sets itself apart from a very good difficult game. It permeates the entire experience. The most well-known example would be the Souls system. For those who may not be aware, there is only really one currency in Dark Souls. You use it to level up and buy items. The only way you can gain it is by killing enemies, and it's known as Souls. The wrinkle here is that if you die, you drop all of your souls that you haven't spent, and you need to fight your way back to them. If you die again, they're lost forever. You see, stakes. This ramps up the tension of every encounter. It doesn't matter how simple and piddly the enemy is, if you make a few incorrect steps, you have something to lose. These stakes infuse every interaction with more weight. This makes every risk reward that you make so satisfying and tactical. Take healing for example. It takes a couple of seconds and makes you vulnerable, but you're going to have to do it at some point. Or even something like attacking must be a conscious decision. You see, the attacks aren't as flashy as most action games. They're a pretty simple set of swings and stabs that can vary a little bit depending on weapons. However, there is a simple but important difference. In most action games, you can cancel pretty much any attack into another attack, or at least a dodge. You can't do that in Dark Souls. Press that attack button and you're going to have to wait until that animation is over before you do anything else. This deliberate nature combined with the stakes that I mentioned earlier make the core combat so satisfying to play. You're going to be using this simple but satisfying combat against a variety of different enemies. There are dudes in armour, little annoying frog dudes, all the way to ghosts. One of the great experiences in Dark Souls is working out the best way to deal with the large variety of enemy types. This is ramped up to the extreme when it comes to bosses, one of the main draws of the Dark Souls experience. Each boss has its own quirks. Honestly, if you kill a boss first time, it wasn't a great boss. The sensation of picking the boss apart, working out its weaknesses, how you should react to any of its attacks, when do you have enough time to heal, this process can be demanding, but succeeding and finally beating that enemy actually feels like an achievement. All of this would be fantastic all on its own, even if the player character and the enemies were just circles and squares on the screen. These core mechanics would still be fantastic. But there is a fantastic wrapper of a story and a world to make the experience even better. The interesting thing about the world and story is how well it fits with the sense of anguish and challenge of the core gameplay. For example, there are no waypoints and the world snakes and twists on itself. For me, this is why people are so impressed by being able to see an area and then later going there. The architecture is real but confusing, and also the distance travelled is difficult and feels worthwhile. This higgledy-piggledy nature creates a slightly off feeling. The whole experience is just a little confusing, and that lends the game a consistent sense of unease. This is bolstered by the way that the story is told. NPCs are cryptic, and much of the background to the story is only found in item descriptions. Even time is confusing in this world. There is a constant sense of exploring a strange and otherworldly place. I mean, in most games, NPCs are reward, story and quest givers. They're always on the side of the player, but in Dark Souls, there are a number of NPCs in this game that straight up lie and deceive the player. NPCs that pretend to be your friend, but aren't. Games are so rarely brave enough to do this, and it makes the characters feel real, like they have their own motivation beyond the machinations of the player character. From what I've said so far, you may think of Dark Souls as uninviting and unfriendly. The thing that stops Dark Souls from feeling desperate is an underlying sense of kindness. Players can leave messages on the floor to help other players in difficult spots. If you're ever hopelessly stuck on a boss, you can always summon another player to help you. There's a sense of community and companionship around this game. This is why I don't feel too bad about saying that if you need to look up a wiki when you're playing Dark Souls, you should. I urge you not to, because there is something special about discovering it yourself, but don't listen to the idiots that will judge you for it. Dark Souls is an incredibly special game. Its core combat is deliberate and deeply gratifying to employ. There are stakes riding on every step you take, every attack you throw, and every choice you make. The enemies are unique, and the challenge of dissecting their weaknesses is some of the best gaming you'll ever have. The world and story bolster this core combat and are nothing like you've ever played before. Despite all this difficulty, there is a backbone of kindness that holds the whole experience together. All of this culminates in a game that you shouldn't miss. If you've played it, let me know what you thought in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for a new game recommendation every week. Well, this is the video that I've been thinking about making for the longest. It really has been a long time coming. It was difficult to really condense what is so fantastic about what I think may be the most influential game of the last decade. Anyway, next week we're going for something a bit more neon-y.